Hi, shalom, friends. You have to know how to look. And that's true about just about everything in life. There are people that know where to look for water, others know where to look for gold, others know where to look for diamonds, others look for oil. But most of all, you have to know how to look to find good in people. Believe me, it's an art. And not only an art, it's actually at times an ordeal. But if a person really works hard and tries to cultivate that talent of finding good in people, you can. One of the great tzaddikim, one of the great righteous people, spent a very long time working with very ordinary people. And his time was so valuable, both in terms of his own study of Torah and devotion to God, as well as his capability of teaching others. And yet he would spend hours and hours, sometimes every week, with people that were so far from observance. And once a great chassid, a follower of him, said, Rebbe, far be it for me to question you, but I don't understand. Why are you working with these people? What do you see in them? And the Rebbe looked at him and said, well, they have a fire for God. And he said, Rebbe, a fire for God? Their fire has gone out a long time ago. These are people that are nothing more interested than the ordinary mundane. Where is their fire for God? And the Rebbe responded, when a fire goes out, it leaves a coal. You might think that there's no fire in a coal, but if you keep poking, you might often find a spark. And that spark can start the fire all over again, even with greater intensity. So friends, this Rebbe saw that in people where there was no fire, he saw fire. Where there was cold, he saw warmth. Where there was death, he saw life. That's an art. That's something to think about. To find the good, to find the fire, to find the good energy that everyone has. The story I'm going to share with you, I apologize in advance. I don't remember all the details, though I know it to be true because I've read it many years ago from the person himself writing it. And it goes something like that, something in the following. This takes place in the mid-70s, where there was a young man who grew up in the northeastern part of the United States of America with a very nice, loving family. They had 3 siblings, and though his parents were not observantly Jewish, they were culturally and maybe a touch of tradition. So they would go to the synagogue for the big holidays, and they would visit grandma and grandpa and do some of the rituals. And they were a very happy, well-adjusted family. And 2 of the 3 siblings grew up very well-adjusted and very accomplished. But this young boy felt a restlessness that he couldn't put it down. He was yearning for something deep, something spiritual, something almost mystical. And he wasn't finding it. He had left home when he was in the second year of university, college. He found that there was sort of an underground group of young men and women that would meet on a weekly basis in someone's home, where there was a very charismatic teacher. And he found out about it. And all he heard was glowing reports. He has captivating eyes, and he speaks he speaks golden. He's very demanding. He could levitate. He's very spiritual, and he elevates us. And he asked to be invited, and he came. And it just took one meeting, and he was captivated. He liked what was being said. He enjoyed the meditations that they did. And he also felt challenged because they were very into once a week only having a liquid diet, and occasionally, in order to prepare themselves for a big spiritual moment, they would often do 2 days of a liquid diet. And he actually felt himself getting closer and closer to what he was looking for, though he wasn't sure himself what is he looking for. The one thing that bothered him was that he was always considered a guest, never part of the inner group. And one day he goes over to the leader and he says, when do I become part of the inner group? And the reply was, you need an initiation. When can we be initiated? He says, well, you need another 2 months. And then after the 2 months, I will let you know what the initiation rites consist of. Well, he worked very hard. He did his fasting, his meditation, his chanting, and no one from the outside could see the transformation that was taking part inside of him. He felt he was hollowing himself out to become a vessel of spirituality. Finally, the great day came, and the fellow packs him up in a van together with some of his fellow. He says, this initiation takes place in nature. Where are we going? I can't tell you. And they drive for a couple of hours to a beautiful scenic area, and they come to a forest. And he says, follow me. And for the first time in this whole long saga, he begins to feel a little bit uncomfortable. Like, why does this initiation have to take place so far away from civilization? Why can't they just do the initiation here? But of course, everyone was following the leader, so he followed as well. They finally came to a designated place in the forest, and some of the packages that were being carried by the fellow co-religionists became unpacked, and he saw stacks of newspapers and magazines. He said, what is this? And jokingly, are we going to have a read-in? And he said, no. What we're going to do is make a bonfire, and the leader stands in front of the bonfire, and you are to swear an allegiance to him and to what he stands for. And for the first time, he felt not only uncomfortable, but something was telling him, this is not right. This is like an idol. He knew enough about Judaism to remember that Jews don't worship deities or people or objects. And until now, there was never any hint about the leader being some type of a deity. It was always he was a facilitator, helping people to get closer. And he began to back out, but then his friends began to encourage him. Don't worry, everyone's a little bit hesitant. You'll get into it. So they gather some twigs, they make a little fire, and now he understands why they brought along the newspapers and magazines, and they start feeding it. And as the fire gets bigger and bigger, the leader changes clothing, stands in front of the fire, and says, this is what you have to do. Get on your knees and say the following. And he's like torn. One part of him says, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. The other part of him says, look, they're offering you nirvana. This is your ticket to heaven. This is something that will bring you into the inner circle, and then the skies itself become the limit. And as he's wavering, he notices that one of the newspapers that's thrown into the fire has a picture of a rabbi. And he looks at that picture of the rabbi. The edges are beginning to smolder, and it seemed to him that the rabbi was talking to him. Don't do this. They want to burn your soul as they're burning my picture. Well, in English, the expression is he freaked. He just ran. He ran and escaped. He was very shaken by the experience and did not know why he was so shaken by it, and that was disturbing to him. So, to accelerate the story, he began finding out more and more about Judaism, and he was directed to 770 Eastern Parkway, Brooklyn, New York, where there was a great Rebbe of Lubavitch, Rabbi Schneerson, and that was known as a mystical sect, and perhaps the mystical sect of Hasidim is what he's looking for. He gets off the subway, he walks into the building, he really is lost, doesn't know whether he's coming or going. People are very friendly, they offer tefillin, they offer him a coffee, he's brought to someone's home, and they begin talking, and he notices on the wall a picture of the Rebbe. And it was so uncanny. The picture hanging on the wall was the picture that he had seen in that magazine or newspaper. Of course, the end of the story has a typical happy ending. He became completely observant and a full-fledged Lubavitcher or Chabadnik, and became very dedicated as a disciple of the Rebbe, who he met many times privately. It's a wonderful story. I'm really sorry I don't know the name and all of the details. But I find the significance of the story, not only how uncanny it is, this newspaper must have had some type of a expose or some type of a story about the great rabbi of Chabad who seems to be making a revolution. Now, what are the chances of that newspaper landing up in the back in the backpack of someone who follows a cult which is probably close to idolatry? I mean, statistically, it's very, very remote, but it happened because God brings light even in places where there's darkness. And literally, the fact that he saw holiness or a picture of holiness being consumed, which could be no greater darkness than that, for an idol, and yet it was that exposure to that moment of unholiness that caused him to be awakened to become holy. So as we're looking for goodness and pleasantness in our fellow man, and as I started in the beginning of my talk to you, it is an art. You have to cultivate it. You have to work on it. Understand as well that wherever you are, even if you find yourself occasionally in a place of spiritual darkness, look, poke around. You might actually find that glimmer of light that will help reignite your inner flame in a more powerful way. Shalom. May we only experience great revelations in our lifetime.